Growing up as a kid in the 80s, there was a lot of cool places to hang out. But what was the coolest? Well, let's look at the top 10 coolest places to hang out in the 80s. Welcome back, guys. It's me, the Junkman, coming back at you with another video, with a top 10 video. Hadn't done a top 10, at least with the cards, in a long time, so I thought it was time to do them again. And we're going to look at top 10 coolest places to hang out back in the 80s. Now, some of these may be just for me, where I hung out a lot in the 80s, but I think most of them is you can relate to it or kind of relate to it. So let's just not waste any more time. And number 10 off the bat has to be your bedroom. I mean, this was your little house. This was where you kept all your toys, or most of the times where you kept your toys. I knew one kid that had a basement full of toys. But anyway, it's where you kept your toys, kept your clothes, kept your personal stuff. I know what you put between your mattresses, because I put mine there too. Wasn't a good hiding spot. Everybody knew where to look for that between the mattresses. But the bedroom was your little house, your sanctuary. Have a friend over, spend a night, sometimes sleep in your room, or just hang out in your room. Maybe you had a little TV. You know, I didn't have a big screen TV or a color TV in my room. I had a little black and white television. You know, I had to use vice grips to change the channel, but it was fun, and it would hook up the Atari to it every now and then, and the Nintendo when I got a little older. So the bedroom was a great place to be. It was, trust me, it really was. Okay, number 9. I'm not sure how many of you built forts, but we built a lot of forts growing up in the 80s. And that was the place to be and hang out. It was away from your parents, away from your bedroom. You finally got out, and if you had woods behind your house, you were always building forts and making rules of who could go in the fort, who couldn't go in the fort. If there was a red-headed kid in the neighborhood, he wasn't coming in that fort. No, he wasn't. He wasn't coming in that fort. If there was a guy that smelled like biscuits, he wasn't coming in that fort either. No, he wasn't. And if there was a guy that looked like 11-year-old Jerry Reed, he got to come in the fort, but had to put that one to a vote. Couldn't just let anybody in. But anyway, the fort was a cool place to be. It wasn't really a good place to sit. It wasn't comfortable. If it was up high in a tree, that made it a little bit better. But the fort was a cool place to hang out. And you felt proud of yourself because you built the fort or helped build the fort. Unless you were sometime like me, my brother and his older friends would build a fort, and they'll hang out in it when they wasn't around. The fort was pretty cool. So where else was another cool place to hang out? The playground. Even when you got a little older, two old playgrounds, they were cool, at least for me. They were cool when you were at school to hang out in the playground. I mean, it's where you traded Star Wars figures or made deals on the playground, maybe bought some now and laters. But for me, we had a school bar at my house. You know, it took me about 2 minutes to walk there, if that long. And it was always cool in the neighborhood to hang out at the playground on a Saturday. You go up there, play on the monkey bars, play on whatever was at the slide. Then when you got a little older, 13, 15, before you were driving and your friends were driving everywhere, you would meet up at the school and, you know, hang out there. Maybe smoke some boobies or something like that, something you shouldn't be doing. And when you got a girlfriend, take up there, sit on the swings and just hold hands on the swings and talk. And there was a lot of good fun hanging out at the playground. So I'm not sure if you had a playground in your neighborhood. It was fun when we were real little, but it was fun when you got a little older too as a kid. Back in the 80s, today's kids don't hang out at the playground. They hang out alone in the bedroom, talking to a video camera, playing video games with headsets on their ears. Okay, let's go. And since we talked about the playground at school, let's talk about number 7, the school. I mean, the school was your life. You didn't really want to hang out at the school, but there was really no other place to hang out at. It was school. During the week, you were there, 6, 7 hours? You were hanging out at the school. And it was always great when you found little places to hang out. I remember we had a gym where they had the bleachers would fold up or something, but you could get behind there. We would go into the bleachers and hide out there, you know, skip a class or two and just hang out in there. Then went to high school. We had a stairwell where we would go behind the stairs to hang out there a little bit. I remember why I used to go there, and this guy always wanted to tell me about Faster Pussycat. And I was like, I don't know what Faster Pussycat is. He always wanted to, he had a Faster Pussycat shirt, wore it every day. But he always wanted to tell me about Faster Pussycat. But you get there, you know, hang out with some cool guys and everything, and then just hang out in the halls, going between classes and thing. I kind of miss school. I hated school. I said I'd never miss it, but then you kind of miss school, don't you? If you say you never will, you kind of do miss it after a while. Now this one's probably more personal to me, so you probably can't relate because it sounds like an old man when I say it, but that's the bowling alley. It took me about 20 minutes to walk there. I ride my bike there. It was in our neighborhood. I know, kids, they don't ride their bike to a bowling alley or walk into a bowling alley. I mean, we walked to the bowling alley, we had no cell phones, no GPS, nothing. But this little, I didn't play bowl there, but back in the back they had a little arcade, but I'm not going to call it an arcade because they only had like 4 machines and 2 of them worked. They had pool tables. It was just a cool place to hang out. You walk up there, you never knew who would be there from your school. Sometimes you walk all the way up there, wouldn't be nobody there. Just old people playing, doing pool or bowling. But every once in a while you walk in there and you see somebody from your class that's in that neighborhood and walked up there too, playing Tron or something, and then you striking up with a new buddy, somebody you usually don't hang out with. But then sometimes me and your buddy I'll just walk to the bowling alley. We would hang out in the arcade and get some, you guys in the north part say soda pop. We just call it Coke. But you know what I mean. Some sodas, a lot of fun, that's for sure. And we talked about forts in the woods. Well, what about just hanging out in the woods by yourself? Fort or no fort, the woods was a good place to hang out. If you're lucky, you found some nudie magazines. I don't know why. People love to put nudie magazines in the woods back in the 80s. I don't know. Did you find nudies? It was never like Playboy. Maybe a Hustler, but it was always the really dirty ones. You know what I'm talking about? Those really, really dirty ones that show, Playboy was kind of tame. But, yeah, the woods. I mean, we had a creek behind our house that had the woods in it. We would see if we could jump the creek. We would find vines to swing on. I don't mess this up or anything, but we had a lot of fun back in the woods. That was a cool place to hang out. And here's another cool place to hang out, especially when you got a little older, and that was the record store. And it was always good if you could find a local record store. I found, I would go to Camelot Record Bar, but there was one downtown area that was like a local place. You would go in there and hang out. Now, I'll be honest, I was a little different. A lot of my people I hung out with, they was into heavy metal music. They were like Metallica, Guns N' Roses, Faster Pussycat, whoever that was. They really like, Iron Maiden, Color Me Bad, Ozzy Osbourne. They like stuff like that, really hardcore metal music. And I was about the only one into country music. That wasn't until the 90s, and everybody was like, "Oh, I like country music." But then, I was listening to Waylon, Hank, the White Yoakum. So it was kind of odd. But I would go to this music store, and there would actually be people there, kind of older people, maybe in their 20s, that were into that music. So it was kind of odd for me to hang out there. But it was a lot of fun to hang out there and talk music. Just talk music. It was a lot of fun. But if you were into like the metal bands and stuff, I'm sure you had your own hangout talking metal music or whatever. Maybe you were into metal. Maybe you were into, I don't know, pop music, disco. Who knows what you're into. Or maybe you were into gangster rap like Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. Okay, where else was a good place to hang out? Let's find out. If you had a house or your friend had a house with a basement, that was always a cool one and the coolest place to hang out. If you had a friend with a basement. Now, we had a friend that was a little older, probably in his late 20s, early 30s, and he had arcade games. I talked about him before. Always wore a white t-shirt, like he was Moose Critical or something. But anyway, always had a white t-shirt. He had video games. That was his job. He put them out in stores, and he would bring them back, when they wasn't in the store. And he was always rotating out video games. So it was a lot of fun. Arcade games, I mean. So it was like a little mini arcade next door. But I had another friend that had a basement. We had a basement, but I never really hung out in our basement. I don't know why. I think because my parents' room was down there, so it just didn't make it fun. But anytime you had a basement, that was a cool place to hang out. Because again, it was kind of like the hang out in your room. This was bigger space. You had more people over. And if you had it set up just right, it was just a cool place to hang out. If you've seen the show, that 70s show, I think a lot of us could relate to those days, just hanging out in a friend's basement, playing Spin the Bottle or something. I never played Spin the Bottle. Never played that. Number 2, we're almost done. Number 2, can you believe that? The video store. Oh, what a great place to hang out. When I say video store, I'm not talking about Blockbuster, Turtles, and Premier Flicks, or Hollywood Video. No, I'm talking about the real video stores. The real video stores. Locally owned. Some local name. Shows to Go was one that we had here. Hunt Reagan. Some local name. Videos to Go or something. This was the place where people love movies went. And these people that owned it, they owned these local video stores, so they knew movies. Hey, watch this, and they could talk. You could just go in there and talk movies forever and just hang out. Just hang out. I can remember one had like a little sitting area, and they would always play like the latest movie would be now playing, and they would show it on the TV. And they would encourage people just to hang out there, not watch, watch the movie, but you wouldn't really pay attention to the movie. It'd be on, you watch a little bit of it, and you talk to your friends, you say, have you seen this? And you look through the movies, you're like, hey, look at this. It was just a lot of fun, and I missed the video store. I miss seeing those boxes, the VHS boxes and everything. I just miss the video store. Do you miss the video store? Or is it just me? And number one is right here. You hear that? You hear that number one? Yes, you do. And I don't think this is going to surprise anybody. The arcade. The arcade was the place. Now, our arcade, we had either Showbiz. I don't really count Showbiz, but arcade at the mall. Ours was Aladdin Castle. You might have had something else. But that was the place to be. Even when you were younger, your parents go to the mall. You just go hang out at the arcade while they go to JCPenney's or whatever and shop around the mall. And you hang out at the arcade. We're always running into some friends. You didn't have a cell phone. You didn't know they were going to be there. You run into friends, hang out with them at the mall, might walk over to the food court. Because I couldn't have put the mall itself on here, but the arcade was awesome. The arcade was the place. And then when you got a little older, in your teens, it was still a place to hang out, fool around, play some games. And then sadly, sometime in the 90s, damn dance machines showed up and ruined the arcade places. You used to go to arcades and see people jumping over mushrooms. Now you go to the arcade and see kids dancing. Boys dancing. I don't know. Just wasn't as fun. I liked when you went to an arcade and you had a knight trying to kill a dragon and it looked like a cartoon. It was awesome. Or when you went to the arcade, you got on your light cycle and tried to crash another light cycle. Not dancing. I don't understand dancing video games. That destroyed the arcades. But the arcade was the place to hang out. Any of you that grew up in the 80s, you remember how cool the arcade was. Whew. And he had the mirror. You thought that was the coolest job ever. The guy that walked around and he had his little change thing on his side where you just push, you give him, $2 or something. Shoot them quarters out really fast. Not even tokens really back in the 80s. They moved that. They started doing tokens later. It was quarters. You were like, that's the coolest job in the world. How do I get that job? And then by the time you got old enough to get a job, that was eliminated because you had the machine where you just feed the money in. And the only job you could do at the arcade was when somebody said, machine took my token. And that wasn't as cool as the cling, cling, cling on the side. That was cool. But anyway, that's 10 cool places to hang out in the 80s. Maybe I missed something. Let me know where you hung out in the 80s that wasn't on this list. Or let me on this list. What would you have put at number one? If you're like, the arcade was cool, but it wasn't as cool as blah, blah, blah. Let me know that and more in the comments. And I think that's it. As always, stop us so you're not out content. Subscribe to the channel. We'll talk again soon.
Hey, Junkman channel popping though.
Thank you, sir, for that unsolicited testimony.